What's going on today? We're taking a look at our first for UFC Saudi Arabia. We're doing a bet breakdown. Today we're looking in the heavyweight division. An Olympian, Hamdi Abdelwahab, gets his second UFC fight, and he takes on kind of now becoming slowly a UFC mainstay in Jamal Pogues. We'll break down their styles and their fighting background to try and leave you with a best bet. Without further ado, let's get straight into the video. Let's first begin with Hamdi Abdelwahab, and he might be the most interesting fighter when it comes to news on this entire card, and that's saying something when Shara Bullet Magomedov is also present. First off, his 5-0 record features 4 first-round finishes, also includes 2 fights in bare-knuckle mixed martial arts, and he fought for his FRM teammate in Jorge Masvidal's promotion. It's included on his record on the broadcast for the UFC, but on Topology, they have him listed at 3-0, so do with that what you'd like. But besides the 2 interesting bare-knuckle wins he has to start his career, this fight also marks Abdelwahab's return off of a 2-year sanction from USADA for doping. His ineligibility stemmed from an anabolic agent on the UFC's prohibited list back when he competed against Dontel Mays in his debut for the organization. The fight was overturned to a no contest, and Hamdi was given a 2-year ineligibility that began back in July of 2022. But what we care more about than these kind of news going into the fight is about his style, strength, and weaknesses, so let's get straight into it. The Egyptian fighter is as much of a wrestler as it gets. According to interviews with the UFC, he's been in the sport of wrestling since he was 5, and he's a regional MMA amateur champion in Tampa, but the significant credentials are in his wrestling background. He silvered at the 2010 Youth Olympic Games in Singapore before going on to win 14 gold medals in the African Championships in both Greco-Roman and freestyle wrestling. He bronzed at the 2014 World Championships and competed in the pinnacle of the sport at the 2016 Olympic Games in Rio. Even with all his wrestling credentials, Abdelwahab is surprisingly smooth on his feet for hitting the near limit of the heavyweight division. However, the striking is clearly where Abdelwahab is most vulnerable. He gets tagged, especially in the division with the most powerful strikers that do have good range management. A perfect example in the second round against what I would call a pretty good striker for heavyweight in Dontel Mays. Mays cracked him with a big combination and nearly had a shot to finish the fight in the second round. Abdelwahab's chin has proven to be enough, and after the shaky round, he went back to his wrestling and dominated this fight on way to a split decision win. His ideal fight is big hooks to enter and then get an explosive takedown, in which he is capable, and that's often enough in the heavyweight division. I do very much like his style. I was surprised to see him as an underdog, but styles do make fights, and his opponent is honestly a pretty good grappler in his own right, and we haven't seen Abdelwahab on his back and really push to the limit in a 3-round fight. So moving on to Jamal Pogues, we've seen a little bit more from him when it comes to the UFC, and he's gained some great experience inside the UFC octagon, getting into the UFC on his second Contender Series fight back in 2022. The fight signaled a shift in Jamal's career as he put on a gut and jumped it from 205 pounds to the heavyweight division, where he now has the 3 fights of experience in the premier organization. Pogues also uses grappling a lot of the time. He has 2 wins where he landed 5 or more takedowns and has an impressive 77% takedown defense, which was on full display against the former LFA and NJCAA national champion wrestler in Thomas Pedersen. Pogues' resume itself has impressive grappling credentials. He's a 3-time NAGA champion, and he's a physical grappler, especially going back to some of his regional performances, albeit the fights were at 205 pounds, but Pogues would land some explosive takedowns, and he also has a good arsenal of trips and takedowns along the fence. Striking-wise, Pogues is much more strategic than I would say his opponent, working behind his jab and throwing off of his clinches and takedowns where he finds it safe. I also like his utilization of kicks here and there. However, he doesn't have, from what I've seen, any real big instances of clear knockout power, and that was at light heavyweight as well. When we take a look at the fight overall, how much did, first off, the 2 years off from the octagon, on top of the tape that we assume were enhanced performances, provide clearly more questions than answers when it comes to the Egyptian fighter Abdelwahab, and Pogues will benefit from a slight height advantage and 5 inches in reach, as Abdelwahab is a much shorter and stockier heavyweight. Hamdi is also heavy for the division, reaching nearly the 265-pound limit, and on the feet, I think the style of Hamdi hasn't really been a style that Pogues has fought inside the UFC, because Hamdi's striking is much more aggressive and comes off of explosive entries and a willingness willingness to trade in the pocket, more than what we've seen from other Pogues opponents. However, where the fight truly gets unpredictable for me is who successfully implements the game plan of grappling first. There is a serious issue on predicting these fights, style versus style, because at heavyweight, once a fighter's put on his back, they're kind of like turtles and really struggle to get back up. And in the case of wrestlers normally, as they're skilled at landing takedowns, but aren't as strong when it comes to getting up after being taken down. So you're really taking a bet. You could break down the styles as much as you want, but it will heavily be impacted by either fighter's IQ, and a mistake is going to be beyond magnified here. Now, I do believe that Abdelwahab is going to have the advantage when it comes to the actual takedown attempt with his Greco-Roman throws, and he also packs a couple trips and obviously explosive double and single legs. So I think that might have an impact, but I've seen more of Pogues on the ground. I think that he's going to be the fighter with the better chance to get up off his back, and he'll threaten with submissions a little bit more. Again, he was doing it more at 205 than he has at heavyweight, but it's still something to consider. The ground and pound could really go either way. I will be looking at the submission props. I'm going to be looking at the over-under because I do think that this fight can go on a little bit, barring an Abdelwahab explosive shot that really rocks Pogues. I don't think Pogues has the power to put Abdelwahab away, and I think Abdelwahab is going to be smart enough in the grappling to avoid being submitted. But that's just my opinion on the fight. Let me know your guys' thoughts in the comment section below. Will you be backing the American or the Egyptian fighter on UFC Saudi Arabia? But we have a ton more fights to break down and predict. If you enjoy this kind of video, smash the like button, subscribe to Combat Sports Central, and I will see you in the next one.